All right. We should be going live now.
It says, it looks like this broadcast was deleted on Facebook.
Let's go live everywhere else.
Yeah, I see you.
Yay.
All right. Awesome.
On Facebook, but we are on YouTube. So just have her put a post in Facebook with a YouTube link.
What do we need to do for fix Facebook?
It says automatically deletes all streams that don't go live within 10 minutes of the scheduled start time.
Oh, we missed the start. Okay. I can go in.
So, looks like the broadcaster was likely deleted on Facebook. If you deleted the start time directly on Facebook,
So what do I need to do? Restart it on Facebook?
to stream on Facebook, create a new broadcast or remove this destination from the broadcast, then re-add it. So if I remove this, remove, and then I'll add Facebook again. Are we on BrainSTEM or are we on mute?
BrainSTEM.
Today, let's just say 2:20. Just go right now with 2 o'clock. This two
It'll start now.
Here we go. Yeah.
All right. Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Welcome to the BrainSTEM Mars Landing Watch Party. So we're gonna kick it off here. It's me. I'm here, and we got your other host, David Miller.
Hey there.
So today, David and I will be walking you all through this Mars landing over the next, hour and a half, 2 hours, until Perseverance lands on Mars. So basically, what we're going to do is walk through kind of the mission and why the Perseverance rover is actually landing on Mars, and then we're going to kind of talk about the entry, descent, and landing period, which is kind of the most scary, the most entertaining, just the 7 minutes of terror that we're going to talk about and discuss and walk you all through what's going to happen during that 7 minutes of terror. And then we're just going to talk more about Perseverance itself as a robot, as a rover, and kind of some of the history getting us to this point and where we've been with Mars exploration as far as rovers and space probes. So, yeah, so that's where we'll be doing next.
If they're on, just type in, say hello and everything like that.
So in the meantime, if you're on the chat, go ahead and type in the chat something that you're interested in learning about the rover or Mars or space exploration. Also, just type in what's up. Let us know who's here, who's in the chat. Hey, RJ and Eli. Hey, how you doing? Ain't TT? Hey, Tay. Glad to have y'all in the chat. Like I said, if y'all have any questions at all during the show, just type them in the chat and we'll try to get to them. And yeah, make sure you put your questions in the chat. Keep the chat going. What's up, Ashley? What's up, little Marcus? Yeah, if you have friends, go ahead and tell them to get their kids on the chat. Get in the live. We're going to be, showing the rover, displaying some of the capabilities of the rover, showing some of the sensors that the rover will be using to complete its missions. So, yeah, if you know any kids that would be interested in space exploration, space travel, robots, go ahead and get them on the live so that they can kind of see what's going on. It's going to be really cool. This is only the second rover of this size to land on Mars. So this is a really cool mission. What's up, Jordan? Hey, Jonetta. Glad to have y'all on the stream. Appreciate that, Jay. Hey, Litz, Lauren from PA. We got Pennsylvania in the house.
Hi, Lauren.
Hey, Ethan. Hey, Natalia. How long did Ethan, you're asking how long did it take to build the lab? Well, it took us probably, about 2-3 weeks to kind of put everything together in the lab, but some of the things were already here. So a lot of the tools we already used in the makerspace, but building everything else around the lab, such as, the camera setup, we got the 3D printers down here. We're going to be doing more shows featuring our maker lab and our makerspace, kind of showing you all exactly what we have down here and the capabilities that we have in the makerspace and how we use some of the tools here. So that's something that we'll be doing in one of our future shows.
Apple TV.
All right.
Tell them we'll be cutting away to
So occasionally we'll be cutting away to the NASA feed to check out what's going on over at NASA and
Right now we're just
get some
getting
live
set up.
coverage. But right now we're going to get set up with our live feed from NASA.
So good. So we'll be coming back to that.
All right, awesome. So we'll be cutting back to that live feed occasionally, see what's going on over at NASA as we kind of talk through this landing, as we call it, the EDL, our entry, descent, and landing for our rover. Hey, Courtney, how's it going? So currently, the rover is orbiting Mars. So it's in Mars's atmosphere and waiting for the instructions to descend to enter into Mars's atmosphere. So the um, the rover, the spacecraft, is hitting into Mars's atmosphere as we speak. We said at around 350, it'll start to make that entry, descent, and landing, and that landing will happen at 3:55. So we'll be here covering the entire process from now until 4 o'clock after the rover lands. Got a question. What am I most excited about today? Well, I guess the thing that I'm most excited about is the this helicopter that's going to be um, deployed from the rover once the rover lands. It's something that's never been tested before, flying a helicopter in the Martian atmosphere. So that's one of the things that I'm really excited about. And we're going to talk more about, that helicopter and why that's so cool and so special that we'll be flying a helicopter for the first time in the Martian atmosphere.
Okay, I think we're both on now. Hey there, folks. I was running around getting some other things, our audio kind of wired up and everything, and checking out. But this is so exciting. And hello, everybody that knows me, and hello, everybody that doesn't know me. And Ricky and I are both so excited about today. This is just amazing when you start thinking about what is going to happen today. This is phenomenal. And again, feel free in the text or in the chat, put any questions or whatever, and we'll be periodically putting us or Ricky in the window just around the NASA feed also. So that'll be great. In fact, we should test that right now. So we're going to put Ricky up, but then we're going to put the NASA feed on, and then we're going to put Ricky in the window. See if we can do that. There he is.
Yep, it's working.
Or should we put him on the upper right? There you go.
All right, so we got a question coming in a feed from Ethan. He says, "Does the rover have a name?" So yes, this rover that's going to be landing today is called Perseverance. So or AKA Percy. So if you hear me call out Percy today, I'm talking about the rover Perseverance, but AKA Percy for short. So yeah, the rover's name is Percy. And like I said, it's the second rover of its kind that's going to be landing on Mars. The other rover, its name was Curiosity, that landed on Mars before that. That's kind of similar to Percy. So I guess we'll go ahead and want to cut into a little bit about the mission and why Perseverance is even doing this. So why are we landing Perseverance on Mars? So David, you want to give them a little bit of a background on why we're landing Perseverance on Mars?
Sure. Obviously this is the 8th, technically 9th mission to Mars that has successfully landed on Mars. And the reason for going onto Mars this time, which is different than other times, and there's not just one mission, but there's several, but the one that's really unique is that we're preparing for humans to land on Mars. So in other words, there's things on this rover that are specifically designed for the feasibility of whether or not we can make it to Mars and what it means when we're going to go to Mars, how we're going to do that. So for instance, on the rover, there's a whole little lab that is going to be testing whether out of what is at Mars, whether we can generate oxygen, right? There's a little lab in there called MOXIE that's going to be able to do that. And so that's pretty profound. And then the other pieces are just, kind of the overall functions and testing that it can do as far as the overall rover for preparing for humans to be able to come to Mars.
Yeah.
The other piece, which is the other big piece, is was there life on Mars? That was the other thing. So that's the other major mission, and it's really designed for, which is just phenomenal when you think about it.
Yeah. So, Percy will be picking up where Curiosity is still going, actually. So, we talked about Curiosity. Curiosity launched back in 2011, and that has been on Mars for what's that coming up on 8 years now. So, it's been doing the same kind of reconnaissance mission that we're getting with Percy now. So, we sent Curiosity up there, similar kind of rover and robot, and tested out some of these maneuvers and techniques. And now we're sending Perseverance up there on a second kind of mission to do some of these similar things, using some of the similar techniques, but using new technologies to further explore what Curiosity couldn't explore because it didn't have the capabilities that Perseverance has now. So a couple of those mission objectives, like we were talking about, was one is looking for habitability. So it's going to be trying to identify past environments that are capable of supporting life. So the these rocks and these rock formations in the climate on Mars contain so much information about the history of the planet and how it could have been habitable before or if life forms existed. So that's one of the biggest things that we're going to be looking for. Also going to be looking for biosignatures. So Perseverance is loaded with tools to analyze the rocks, the atmosphere, to analyze the space dust, and actually collect those items so that we can actually send something up to retrieve those items and bring those back to Earth. That's something that's never been done before. And just as David talked about, the beauty of this mission is whether or not we find that there was life before on Mars, or if life existed before, or if there's a possibility that life existed, we're planning for the future. We're looking to see if Mars is habitable for humans and how we can make that possible. So that's one of the biggest things that's going to happen with this mission is testing, one, the conversion of carbon dioxide into oxygen for fuel, but also for living.
Yeah, let's also just try to see if we just make sure that we get it. We're going to try to get the live feed from audio from the space mission there. That's there. And see. Yeah. Here's the funny thing. I don't know if on this, if we actually have any sound coming out right now. This is the control room where they're doing all the monitoring of what's landing and that of the rover. And there's a whole kind of trajectory lineup that they're looking at and checking on that window. So we'll be cutting to other coverages also, but this is the main one where actually they'll know whether or not it actually worked or not.
Yeah. So got another question in the chat. It says, what has Curiosity been able to find us so far? So, well, one of the big things with Curiosity, right, was Curiosity was the first rover of its size that we were able to successfully land on Mars. So Curiosity was about the size of a Mini Cooper. So about 7 foot long with a 7-foot arm on Curiosity. So the goal with Curiosity was to explore Mars for past life. So it was its goal was to travel around Mars and to explore the atmosphere and the rocks and take samples of those and look for remnants of water or rocks that may have come or materials that may have come from water or formed in water. So yes, Curiosity has been successful and it has discovered that Mars did indeed have water and has found multiple tributary areas where water once was. So that's rivers, lakes that used to be on Mars. So that's one of the really cool things about Curiosity. And another cool thing is they will be able to communicate back and forth between each other. Like I said before, Curiosity is still on its mission. Now we have Perseverance going up there to join it with new tools, new skills, and new capabilities that will allow us to explore the planet even further. So, and that's one of the really cool things about the Perseverance rover. Is yes, we've done this kind of before. The maneuvers to land that rover are some of the things that were really important in being tested during the Curiosity mission. So during the Curiosity mission, it was the first time that they used the sky crane maneuver. And we'll bring up some footage of that sky crane maneuver later, but the sky crane maneuver kind of lowers that bot down into a position safely, because before that, when they delivered these rovers to space, they basically delivered them in huge bubbles. So they would put the robot in a huge bubble, send that bubble down, and it would bounce on the surface of the planet until it came still. Then the bubble would deflate. Then the bot would kind of roll out of that bubble. And I'm sure some of you have probably seen those images of kind of the bot rolling out of the big white bubble. But that's how we delivered our rovers before. But we have never delivered a rover to Mars as big as Curiosity. So Curiosity was the first rover of its size, nearly 2,000 pounds, about 1,700 pounds Curiosity was, versus Perseverance. Similar rover, but a little bit bigger. Curiosity was 7 foot versus Perseverance is a 10-foot rover. So, about 2,000 pounds exactly for Curiosity. So about 300 or so pounds more in weight and a little bit bigger of a bot.
Go ahead, flight. Go ahead, flight.
Getting our second.
Please note that in a few minutes we will conduct the nav show. Copy that.
Flight this FP.
Go ahead, Pete.
I can confirm via EHA that the 4 expected SFP monitors are now response disabled, as expected.
Copy all protection.
So
There's nothing going on. There's no audio.
yeah, so now we're live, from NASA, watching in the launch control room or the mission control room. Right now, not much is going on there. It's kind of hurry up and wait while they're, waiting for the bot to reach the location to start the entry, descent, and landing maneuvers.
Copy that.
So
All right.
up
so
until
I
this
hope
point,
everybody-
what has Perseverance been doing? What was the journey for Perseverance to reach Mars? Well, so Perseverance was actually launched
How about now,
almost
flight?
a year ago.
Much better.
Well, not quite
Try it
a year
again.
ago. It was about 8 months ago.
Okay, I hope everybody can
on a
look
rocket
at the Doppler
called the
screen. So I'm
Atlas
talking to that for a
Full
little bit.
5
So
rocket.
the first one
And
shows
Atlas
on the
5
top the Doppler residuals
launched
right now, and you see the
in
dashed line. That's where we
launched
expected
the
we had a
rover
perfect
to
trajectory.
Mars.
And at this point, we're still pretty
And
close.
what's been going on is that rover's been traveling to Mars
as we get
over this
closer to
time.
Mars into the
So
gravity
we
well.
had to plan a
It's
specific
less-
time to launch
Mars
so
is
that we
starting to
launched
tell
at
us
the
where we
best
really
time
are.
so
You can
we
see that in the
created
lower
the
right
shortest
corner,
distance
where you can see
to Mars
actually
from Earth. So
nicely
when
how
Mars and
Mars
Earth
is
were
really
passing each
telling where it
other,
is, and the uncertainty ellipses have
we
been nicely collapsing.
launched that
We're
rocket
actually
so that
pretty
we
close.
could
EP
meet
3
Mars
report
at the
report.
perfect
So that
time
looks
to create
good.
the best and most
So then to
efficient
continue,
travel path for our
what
rocket and our
as
rover
we go
to reach Mars.
into
So
EDL,
over the
you
past
see that
8
first
months,
we're actually still in outer space.
Perseverance has been
And then actually,
traveling
at one
through
point, this will be
space
the top plot on
on
your
its
screen.
way to Mars.
You'll see
And
that we
finally
rapidly
today,
decelerate
It's going to reach,
in the
reach its
atmosphere
destination.
and then actually go to parachute deploy
And that's what we're here for.
at the hopefully at the end, and then we go further. We'll just zoom in on that a little bit. So this just shows you more zoom in of that, and we'll do that actually during the EDL, so you could get a good look at all. And you can also see all the events that are going to happen. Put dashed lines because they're not quite certain at what time they exactly occur, but it should be close. So we'll also have a bottom plot, which will show actually where we actually try to model what's going on. So that takes a big signature that you saw. And again, if you then zoom in on the latter part, you can see that we hopefully will be able to see bank reversals and the chute deploy as we perform EDL. And I will make those calls if I see them in the Doppler on the M20 EDL ops. So everything is looking good at this point, and nav is green. So back to you.
Copy, Nav. Thanks for that. All stations be advised at 11:49 local, we will begin our Edl Main Briefing, as well as our Edl Com Briefing.
OL2, OL1, back on net.
Copy that, OL1. Thank you.
OL1, OL3,
OL3,
letting you know that the telemetry is green.
copy. Thanks for the update on your status.
Got another feed from NASA coming up. Next interviews that I want to have.
We're going to jump into some interviews from NASA.
OL1, this is TAP 1.
Go tap 1.
We have a EPU comparison for OD134. The position delta is now 148.1 meters. As a reminder, the previous was 157.2.
Copy. Do you mind sharing the table briefly?
Will do.
Team has given it everything they've gotten to put it all out there and to make this successful, and I think we're ready.
Thanks, Matt, and good luck on your 5th mission.
Thank you very much.
Well, Jezero Crater is a
Everything's
location
tagline.
on Mars that has scientists for years. Let's head over to Marina to learn more about
If you have the
science
B-plane handy, can
goals
you
of
add
the
it
mission.
to it? If not, I can switch it.
That's right, Raquel. Here to
I
explain
think I have
why we want to go there is Deputy Project Scientist
Actually, I only see
Katie
133 in my email.
Stafford. Welcome, Katie.
Thanks, Marina. Glad to be here.
Now, Perseverance is landing on Mars at the Jezero Crater. Why is it that you and the team chose this particular area?
Yeah, so scientists believe Jezero Crater is one of the best places on Mars and possibly the entire solar system to look for signs of ancient life. Jezero contained an ancient lake
showing the
and
134
has been
B-plane
one
too.
of the best
Awesome,
preserved
thank you.
ancient delta deposits on the surface of Mars. And deltas form when a river enters a relatively open body of water.
We finally
like an
see a little
impact
bit of the
crater,
twist we've been
and
looking for
deposits
here in
the
the end
sediment
game.
that it's carrying into the lake. And we know based on studies of deltas and lakes here on Earth that they're great places to concentrate and preserve organics and support microbial life. We're also excited because Jezero
All stations on M20 ops. We're about 15 minutes out before I'd like us to take a shorter break. So just a reminder, if you want a little bit of time off net to stretch, now's a
This
good
might be a
time.
tough choice.
If you hadn't had any peanuts and want some, feel free to do that while you're out there as well.
Discovery that we expect to get from this mission.
Yes, hands down, I think the most rewarding discovery I think we can make with Perseverance would be finding a truly compelling ancient biosignature on Mars. The rocks in and around Jezero crater record a period of time when life first arose in the solar system, and we have the opportunity with Perseverance to study the evolution of the planet from a once habitable world likely capable of supporting ancient life to the cold, barren planet we know Mars is today.
And why do you think, Katie, it's so important to find out if there really is or was ancient life on Mars?
Well, the question of whether there's life beyond Earth is one of the most fundamental and essential questions we can ask. And our ability to ask this question and develop the scientific investigations and technology to answer it is one of the things that make us as a species so unique. And based on everything we know about Mars in the past, it absolutely should have been capable of supporting ancient life. So we can find out an answer to the question, where there were habitable environments, was there life? And studying the possible emergence of life on ancient Mars can also help us better understand the conditions that led to life on our own planet.
That's so fascinating, Katie. Now we're going to take a question from a student, Vara.
Hi, I'm Vara, and my question is, why was Mars able to sustain lakes and rivers ages ago, but cannot now? Isn't it cold enough to make water, and isn't it always? Thank you.
Yeah, that is such a great question. And one of the things that protects our atmosphere here on Earth and allows liquid water to be stable on our own planet is the fact that we have a magnetic field protecting that atmosphere. We think that Mars lost its magnetic field way back billions of years ago and left the atmosphere exposed to things like solar winds and cosmic rays that basically blew that atmosphere away. And once that happened, liquid water wasn't stable on the surface of Mars anymore. It was too cold and the pressure was too low. And so now Mars is not capable of supporting liquid water and likely not capable of supporting life at its surface.
Well, thank you so much to Vara for that great question. And a big shout out to all the kids that are watching out there today. And thank you so much to you, Katie, for joining us. That was so great.
Thank you.
Now sending it back over to you, Raquel.
Thanks, Marina. Earlier, we were able to catch up with the communication systems engineer, Chloe Sakier. She helps us break down the system used to track Perseverance during landing.
The communications infrastructure supporting Perseverance's landing is quite complex. We've rallied a truly global network of relay and communications assets to help us capture and record those precious minutes of entry, descent, and landing, or EDL. We receive a stream of engineering telemetry via these communication assets that helps us see and understand exactly what's happening. Perseverance sends direct-to-Earth X-band tones, each of which provides us with indications of critical entry, descent, and landing events. During entry, descent, and landing, we have two Mars orbiters listening for the ultra-high frequency, or UHF, signals from Perseverance. These orbiters relay these signals to deep space network stations on Earth, Madrid in Spain, and Goldstone in California. The Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, or MRO, has reconfigured its software to perform a type of relay called bent pipe. This will provide us with near real-time telemetry during entry, descent, and landing. We have coverage from the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter from just before entry to a few minutes after landing. The telemetry we receive will be delayed by the time it takes light to travel from Mars to us back on Earth. Additionally, the Mars Atmosphere and Volatile Evolution spacecraft, or MAVEN, is recording these UHF signals and will be relaying that recording hours after landing. MAVEN will be covering us from around the time of cruise stage separation until a few minutes after landing. We also receive what we call heartbeat tones, which are indications that the spacecraft is alive and progressing throughout entry, descent, and landing. It's important to note that while unexpected, we could lose our communication links and still land safely. Because Perseverance is doing entry, descent, and landing completely autonomously, she doesn't need our help to joystick the landing. The communication links give us added visibility.
And you can see Chloe hard at work inside Mission Control right now. Perseverance's landing might look like the system the Curiosity rover used back in 2012, but landing on Mars is difficult. There's always a risk involved. Here's what needs to happen for Perseverance to touch down safely in Jezero crater.
nothing can be taken for granted when you get to Mars. There's a lot of things we just don't know.
Space always has a way of throwing us curveballs and surprising us.
I mean, until we get the data that says we're on the ground safely, I'm going to be worried that we're not going to make it.
Entry, descent, and landing is often referred to as the 7 minutes of terror because it takes about 7 minutes to get from the top of the atmosphere of Mars to the ground safely.
The spacecraft has to do all of this by itself.
There are many things that have to go right to get Perseverance onto the ground safely.
There's a lot counting on this. This is the first leg of our sample return relay race. There's a lot of work on the line.
Starting about 10 minutes before atmospheric entry, we get rid of really the spacecraft part of the rover that's been supporting us.
We come screaming in to the Martian atmosphere at 12 to 13,000 miles per hour.
And the heat shield is what dissipates all that initial energy through friction.
The vehicle will continue actually flying itself through the atmosphere. It's sort of like a transforming vehicle that went from spacecraft and now it's kind of like an aircraft actively guiding itself.
When we're going slow enough, we deploy a parachute.
It's the biggest supersonic parachute we've ever sent to another planet. It's critical for slowing down the vehicle.
Perseverance's entry, descent, and landing borrows heavily from that of Curiosity.
But fundamentally, Perseverance is a different rover. She's bigger, she has different instruments.
We've added a lot of smarts on the inside to make it more capable so that it can deal with the landing site that we've given.
The science team identified Jezero Crater as basically an ancient lake bed and one of the most promising places to look for evidence of ancient microbial life and to collect samples for future return to Earth. The problem is it's a much more hazardous place to land.
When you look at Jezero, all you see is danger. How do we go to a site that we never thought was safe enough to go to before? So the heat shield, which has protected us all the way through entry, is no longer necessary. We need to get that off so that we can actually see the ground. And we can see the ground in a couple different ways.
Perseverance will be the first mission to use terrain relative navigation. So while it's descending on the parachute, it will actually be taking images of the surface of Mars and determining where to go based on what it sees. This is finally like landing with your eyes open. Having this new technology really allows Perseverance to land in much more challenging terrain than Curiosity or any previous Mars mission could. Amongst the rocks and the craters and the cliffs, these things are hazardous to the rover, but these are the things that are interesting to the scientists.
Once Perseverance has figured out where she is, jettison the back shell and parachute and light up our rockets. Those rockets help us steer to a safe landing spot that's nearby.
That descent stage takes us all the way down to about 20 meters off the ground.
That's when we start the sky maneuver. Once the rover has hit the ground, the descent stage will cut loose from the rover and fly away to a safe distance. Surviving that 7 minutes is really just the beginning for Perseverance. Its job, right, being the first leg of sample return, to go look for those signs of past life on Mars. All that can't start until we get Perseverance safely to the ground. And then that's when the real mission begins.
With us now is Al Chen. He is Perseverance's entry, descent, and landing lead. Al, you were part of the Curiosity rover landing. Does it get any easier the second time around?
It absolutely does not, especially when considering we're trying to land the biggest, heaviest, and most complex rover we've ever built at the most dangerous landing site we've ever attempted. Jezero may look great and
All right, so we just watched that video about the entry, descent, and landing, and it kind of talked about and walked us through the parts of that entry, descent, and landing. But I want to break that down a little bit more for you. So I talked about that the Mars Perseverance rover had been on this long journey, over the past several months to reach this part that it's going to do today, the entry, descent, and landing. But what spacecraft was the rover traveling in during this time? So let's take a look at that spacecraft. All right. So as you can see here, the Mars 2020 rover spacecraft has several parts, and I'm going to kind of walk through these components. So what it's currently in right now is what we call the cruise stage. The cruise stage is kind of what the rover is compact and traveling in as it's entering into that atmosphere. So the cruise stage has everything in it from power to communications and features to, with solar arrays, and different things so that we make sure that the robot makes it into the atmosphere safely. The second component that we have in there is the back shell. So the back shell and the heat shield together form an aero shell, in which protects the rover during the turbulent descent into Mars. So when that bot is moving into the atmosphere of Mars, it gets really, really hot to the fact that that reaches 1,300 degrees Celsius while that bot is moving into the atmosphere. So that heat shield in the back shell protect the bot as it's entering into the atmosphere from that heat. Then in the descent stage, so they showed you kind of the descent stage of that robot after that parachute deploys. So after the parachute deploys, we enter further into the descent stage where we have the jetpack that deploys. So the jetpack is to further slow us down as we're going down to the surface. Because that vehicle, when it initially comes in, think about it, 12,500 miles per hour. The vehicle's traveling at, that space cruiser is traveling at 12,500 miles per hour when it enters into Mars's atmosphere. So we need that thing to slow all the way down to 0 by the time it reaches the surface. So all of these techniques that we're using step by step to slow the bot down on the way to Mars' surface are necessary so that we ensure a safe landing. So from 12,500 miles per hour to 0 miles per hour is what we're about to see. And these are the capabilities and the techniques that are allowing us to land that robot safely. As we kind of talked about before, the first time that these techniques were used was in the Mars Curiosity rover. So with Curiosity was the first time that we used this parachute descension stage with the jetpack to land our rover. And like I said, again, we had to do that because of the weight of our rover. Before, we had rovers a quarter of this size. So it was easier to land those rovers in that bubble. But now, since we have almost a 2,000-pound rover, we have to land it in a special way and use special techniques to ensure the safety of the rover and the equipment that it's carrying. So inside of that, we have our rover that will be released from that platform once we get close enough to the surface of Mars. So that's how the bot is traveling, and that's how the bot has been moving up to this point.
So I could break in just for a moment here, that for you to realize how fast that the rover and the vehicle it's in right now has been traveling through space to get to it. Think of it this way. If you snap your fingers like that, just go ahead and snap your fingers. The speed the rover's been traveling is, in that snap, it has traveled 7 football fields. That's how fast it's been traveling.
That's moving.
That's moving. that's definitely moving. So what that means is that it has to go from that into basically being stationary to lower that rover down, if you think about that, which is just crazy as far as what they're going to do. And the first part that they're doing actually to do that is what Ricky's been talking about, is actually using the atmosphere of Mars to slow it down. Go ahead, Ricky. Sorry.
Oh, you're good.
I messed with your feed. It's your computer. Check. Let's see. 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 There we go.
So, all right. So here we're looking at a live image or a 3D image of the Perseverance rover. So we can kind of scroll around and get a good look at all of the sensors and cameras and capabilities that this rover has. So
We lost it. Yeah.
1 second.
Yeah. We're losing your computer feed.
Huh.
Like, if you want to do this, render this. Could be here. Okay. See if that's. That's the NASA feed. Lost your computer, man. I'm plugging it back in again. It's really dim.
Let's let it come back up before we do it.
Right now. We'll just talk a little bit more when we get to another cable.
Yeah, having a little bit of trouble with the feet there, but as we were saying, what we're going to do is kind of go back through this robot and look at each one of those sensors that makes this robot special. Because I know a lot of people had the question of what makes this Perseverance robot so special, since we've already done something similar with a robot before by the name of Curiosity, which looks very similar and has a similar mission. But with Curiosity, like I said, it was our first time trying some of these things. So we went through for the tried and true solution this time with getting our bot landed, but with some of the capabilities that in the sensors and the new capabilities that Percy has, we're going to be able to explore new depths and explore new places and actually have a more not successful, but more pointed mission with some of the capabilities that Curiosity has. So one of the things I want to talk about is, dive deeper further into those objectives that Percy set out to do. So one of those things is to study the geology of the planet. So like I said, study the rocks and the landscape to reveal, about the history of different regions in on the planet. And that's really, like I said, critical to understanding the habitability of Mars and if ancient species or ancient life lived on Mars. They'll also be able to kind of characterize these rocks and tell whether or not this rock came from an asteroid that crashed into Mars, or if this rock was real Martian dust. So sometimes things that we collect from a planet may not be exactly from that planet. It's from something that crashed into that planet. So it's not native to the planet, which wouldn't give us any insights as to what we're trying to find, or if Mars is habitable, if, say, the water that we found was from a comet or an asteroid. So now we're gonna cut over to a feed, kind of discussing and talking a little bit about the robot and the sensors and capabilities.
Weather suite of instruments that will allow us to characterize the local climate around Perseverance. So that's a quick tour of the rover, but I got to get back to work. So back to you.
Perseverance is collecting samples of Martian rock for future return to Earth. We've heard that scientists have been wanting to bring Martian samples back for many generations. And here to talk a little bit about that is NASA's Planetary Science Division Director, Lori Glaze, who joins us now to talk about the role Perseverance will play in NASA's future goals. Welcome, Lori.
Hi.
Now, as you just heard, we've heard that scientists have been wanting to bring back these Martian samples for a very long time. Why do we need to bring them back?
That's really a great question. You know, we actually have examples of Mars already here on Earth that came here as meteorites, but we don't know exactly where they came from on Mars. And then they also have had to make the trip from Mars to Earth. And so they got altered during that time. And then during their entry and descent into the Earth's atmosphere, that also changes what those rocks are like. So being able to go to Mars and actually collect the sample where we know exactly where it came from, and we know we can preserve it and keep it pristine and carry it all the way back here, this will be incredibly important to help us answer questions about the geologic history of Mars, understanding how it formed and evolved, and also really important questions about whether or not life actually existed on Mars 3.5 billion years ago, and whether that life, if it existed, has been preserved in the surface of Mars.
Now, Lori, these sample tubes that Perseverance is going to be collecting, they're the cleanest things ever created on Earth. Tell me a little bit about that.
Oh my goodness. We worked so hard. The team here at JPL is absolutely incredible to assure that those sample tubes are incredibly clean. One of the main goals of this mission is to be able to detect if there's actual life that's preserved, ancient life preserved in those rocks, in those samples. And we definitely don't want to be carrying, our own DNA off to Mars and then bring it back here to confuse our scientists when they're trying to study those samples. So it is an incredibly clean set of equipment that's been sent there. As you said, the cleanest thing we've ever sent into space.
Now, this is a very complicated campaign. Can you break down for us how it's going to work and if there's any international partners working with us?
You are correct. The Mars sample return campaign is incredibly complex. In fact, it's probably the most challenging thing we've ever tried to do. But we're definitely not going to try and do it alone. We have great partners with the European Space Agency. And the way this campaign is going to work, well, Perseverance is the first step. Chapter 1 is going to Mars and collecting the samples. Chapter 2 is going to be a sample return lander that we hope to launch in around 2026 to 2028. And that lander, it'll be an American lander carrying a fetch rover that's provided by European Space Agency. And that little fetch rover will drive out and pick up the samples that Perseverance left on the surface of Mars. And the fetch rover will bring them back and load them into a rocket that we call the Mars Ascent Vehicle, which will be the first ever launch from another planet. And it will launch those samples into orbit around Mars. In the meantime, European Space Agency will have an orbiter that's in orbit around Mars that can rendezvous and capture those samples and then bring them back to Earth for us to study back here in our amazing laboratories.
A lot of firsts, it sounds like, Lori. And another first, how is Perseverance and the Mars sample return mission going to help the future human exploration of Mars?
I'm so glad you asked that. I think we're going to get a lot of great information from Mars sample return with, again, being able to land the heaviest payload we've ever landed on Mars will be that sample return lander. That's critical to us learning how to land humans on Mars. And then we are definitely going to want to be able to launch the humans back off of Mars. So that Mars Ascent Vehicle is going to be critical, that first step of the first launch from another planet.
So exciting, Lori. And speaking about the Mars generation, we're now going to take a student question for you from Livia.
Hi, my name is Livia, and my question is, what made you want to study Mars, and why are you working so hard and willing to wait so long for a sample? Thank you.
Oh, Olivia, that is such a great question. And I enjoy Mars just because it can tell us so much about how our solar system formed and evolved. All of the planets can tell us different parts of that story, and Mars is a really key piece of that. And one of the main reasons we're willing to wait so long to get the sample back is that we've got great new scientists that are all about your age, and in about 10 or 15 or 20 years, you'll be the generation that's going to actually get to work with these samples. When they come back, you'll be the scientists and engineers that will be the next generation to change how we think about Mars and how we think about life in the solar system.
That was a great question, Lori. Reach for the stars, future little scientists and engineers. Thank you so much for joining us here today, Lori.
It's my pleasure. Thanks.
Back to you, Raquel, for another mission update.
Thanks, Marina. The cruise team for Perseverance controls the rover on its way to Mars. And moments ago, they handed it over to the landing team. And it looks like team leaders in mission control are about to talk to both teams. So let's listen in.
The CBM change, as I mentioned previously, is to the EDL reserve to a non-coherent route.
Activity.
Copy flight.
EDL phase, go ahead.
I think I'd like to see pep talk, I guess, to the team. All right. I'm terrible at pep talks. I think my reputation precedes me there. And look, I know this hasn't been easy, right? I'm not even sure we've even been all in the same room at the same time. I mean, I'm staring at folks across the internet as well. Even now, right? Yeah. Voice check. Okay. I do want to just extend my heartfelt appreciation from the EDL team to the launch cruise team. You've done everything we've asked for, right? I mean, you've battled anomalies, you've dealt with Cepheids, you've done everything. You delivered a healthy spacecraft to the place that we want to go, and she's right on target, right? You did the last maneuver literally 2 months ago, right? This is pretty incredible, in my opinion. And she's armed with the right information to help us land. Doing the parameter update last night, we're ready to roll. You've done everything right. And you've put up with us too, right? You've put up with our eccentricities and the things we like to do in EDL land. So I very much appreciate that. So you all should sleep in on Friday, since you guys have earned it. Thanks for literally and figuratively putting us in the right position to succeed. And let's land on Mars together.
Copy EDL phase. And as flight director, I also would like to thank the whole team, cruise ops, EDL ops, EDL team, and the surface ops as well. It's been an amazing journey. I think we all know that. And it's been my honor and pleasure to work with you all side by side. And your tireless efforts and endurance in the face of our challenges has been truly, truly inspiring. So kudos to you. Mission, would you like to say something?
Yeah, just echoing the same words that Al and Magdi have mentioned. You guys have overcome great obstacles in the last 6.5 months, and it started with an earthquake in this room on launch day at L-20 minutes. So I can't be more proud than all of the achievements that you guys have pulled off in the last 6.5 months. Whatever happens in the next hour and a half, you can be proud of the achievements that you've accomplished so far. I look forward to seeing you on the other side. And I only wish that the rest of our team could be sharing this moment with us. This is a very unusual event. This room is only half as full as it would be if we weren't in this pandemic. So missing everybody on the team who's not with us here today. And go EDL.
Welcome to the EDL family.
And with that, Godspeed Perseverance.
Okay.
Yeah, so they were discussing the landing, and that's one of the really cool things that that's really happening with Perseverance versus Curiosity. So Curiosity, landed no eyes. So we kind of landed blind. So you kind of think about dropping something out of the sky and you have a relative idea of where it's going to land, but you have a 12-mile landing radius. So if I was going to bring you to Louisville and I said, hey, I'm just going to parachute you in and drop you down within a 12-mile radius of your destination, you figure out how to get there the rest of the way. So that's kind of what happened with Curiosity. Now we're moving into the new world of Perseverance and the new technology that we're going to be using to do that landing, and it's going to help us do that. So that's called targeted range navigation. So David, how cool is that we're going to be able to use this new technology to help us, one, land more efficiently and kind of navigate in the air before we even land?
Well, I think what's really, really cool and that I really, really am amazed at that they're making possible now is the fact that we are going with our eyes open on this landing, right? That what we're doing here is we are now going to be able to have the rover, or well, the landing system, which includes the rover inside, be able to land with seeing the actual surface of Mars.
So that means that there's 4 actual cameras that are dedicated just to the landing of our rover, just to make sure that our rover is landing successfully. So those cameras are going to watch for the deployment of that heat shield. They're going to be watching for the deployment of the parachute and all the other things that are going on during this landing. So it's going to be the first time that we have eyes on our landing, our eyes on the entry, descent, and landing portion of our travel. But also what's really cool with that is, with this targeted range navigation, it's actually using some AI techniques to kind of look at the ground and decide where the bot should land. Now, that is really crucial to where our bot land, because you got to remember these bots actually move really, really slow. So when you're talking about a 12-mile radius for a bot that moves really, really slow, and we're talking about on the ones of miles per hour here, that is a big deal to land within closer than 12 miles, like Curiosity. So with that targeted range navigation, it can also find certain land masses so it can land on flat land. So if there's a mountain or a hill or just a bad terrain for the rover to land on, then using that targeted range navigation, it can kind of determine, hey, that's a bad landing spot. Let me adjust where I'm going to land. And also, it's using range targeting to help tell the bot where it is. So that's some of the new technology that's going to be used during this landing. And I think one of the things that we discussed also is this could shave a year off of the travel of the bot just by using this technology.
Right. And if you think of that, that's so significant that with this being able to go, because basically they're landing in what used to be a lake, right? So if they're able to land there and not have to traverse to there and shave a year off of the travel time to get to the lake, that is phenomenal. Because the amount of science, more science that they can do, or quicker science that they can do, it is when we get to what the real mission is. I mean, this is a real important mission, obviously landing the rover, but the real mission is when the rover lands and it starts doing all the things that it can do. So now, Ricky, was there some more that you wanted to talk about in regards to the actual sensors and stuff like that are on the rover?
Yes.
You want to do that?
Yes, definitely.
So we now have his computer working again. So let's pull up your computer screen. You want to make that full screen, and then I'll hop off here. So let's
try that.
There you go.
All right. So as you can see, now you can see this robot, and we're looking at all of these sensors that are kind of special and unique to the Perseverance robot. So as you look down here, there are 23 cameras. So 9 engineering cameras, 7 science cameras, and 7 entry, descent, and landing cameras. So we kind of talked about those entry, descent, and landing cameras and how those will be used during the entry, descent, and landing. One of the things that we kind of didn't talk about during the entry, descent, and landing is before they had no eyes on the ground, but they did have a few mics. So this time, this robot has more mics, and mics that are dedicated to listening to the entry, descent, and landing, but also mics that are going to be dedicated to listening to things that are going on and taking data from the robot when it's analyzing certain samples on the ground. But the mics that are being used right now are during the entry, descent, and landing. We'll be listening for certain things like the parachute being deployed or the shield being released. These are things that also give our engineers clues that the mission is going successfully. So we're using eyes and ears during this mission, and especially during the entry, descent, and landing. Like we said, during that 7 minutes of terror, that is one period of time where we don't have any communication with that robot. So it's crucial that we know what happens during that time. Whether or not we're successful or not, we want to make sure that we get that data back so that we know what's going on in the air. So that's one huge thing that, like I said, with that 7 minutes. If you realize that Mars is 11 light minutes away from Earth, that's why we have to have an automated system take over that robot and control that robot as it maneuvers down safely to the surface, which that takes about 7 minutes to happen. But we're 11 minutes behind. So technically, before the bot would even send us back the information to tell us, hey, I need you to change my trajectory, the bot will have crashed. So we have to use automated systems to control that robot, like we talked about with the targeted range navigation and range triggering, to determine where to land that robot safely. And these cameras are going to help us make sure and ensure, and the mics are going to make sure that we do that. So now I kind of want to talk about a few of the sensors on this bot that are going to help us analyze the geology and astrobiology of the terrain. So as you can see up here, we see this head. This is called the Mastcam Z head. So the Mastcam Z is primarily used for taking pictures of the atmosphere and navigating the bot. These are kind of the eyes of the bot, kind of up here. If you want to think of the bot as having a body and a brain, these are kind of the eyes of our robot here in our Mastcams. So then we have our super cam. This is one of the things that I'm really excited about, and I'm really excited to hear how this performs. So one of the cool things about the super cam is the super cam is actually a green laser that's used, and when it's shot at a rock, that it'll melt that rock and vaporize that rock right there. And now from that rock and those samples, we're going to be getting data back in two ways. Well, one, like I said, those mics. So we're going to be listening to that data hit that rock, and that sound, we're going to be able to determine if there's water present or water materials that were created from water in that rock. We'll also be looking at that the vapors using those cameras that we have for the images and the smoke that comes off of that that rock, because there's data in the vapor, and those cameras will be detecting that vapor. So that is one of the really cool things, and I'm interested to see how it goes. Yes, Curiosity had a laser, but not nearly as powerful as the SuperCam laser, and not nearly with the capability of being able to read some of those vapors that Percy is able to. Update your screen. All right. So next, I kind of want to talk about the technology that is on this arm here. So this is a 7-foot arm, and on the 7-foot arm, it has tools that will allow the rover to not only dig and drill into the ground and collect samples, but also to take pictures of the ground and take ground penetrating images. So that is what the Watson bot on the end there is doing. It's one of those objects going to be used to take pictures up close and personal of those rock samples and rock formations. So maybe the rover can't travel up a hill or up into some of this terrain, but they can use that arm to maneuver into different places and be able to take those pictures and get those samples that we need. Next, we have Pixel that is on the end of the bot. So you see that Pixel there, micro context camera. So that camera is really cool. It's a chemical analyzer. So that camera will be looking for the chemical composition of rocks and different things that we discover on the planet. And this will be the first time. So in that arm, they also will be including some space material from future astronaut uniforms. So they'll be testing some of those materials, and this is the first time that they have tested astronaut materials or uniform materials for astronaut materials in space. So they have 5 sample materials that they'll be testing up there in the Sherlock experimental arm of that bot, which I think is really cool.
Before you say anything more, Ricky, I think one of the interesting things for me, and I'm wondering what your thoughts are on this, that we, how do I say this? For a long time, I know for me, when I was born and then like kind of in my growing up years was when they were having all the Apollo missions and everything like that happening, which was really, really cool. But then there was a real long period of time where actually traveling to planets and going to the moon and everything, we kind of retracted back, especially in the United States, and did some stuff as far as International Space Station, but not a whole bunch else, right? And so the interesting thing here is this is getting ready for a whole new sustained examination and literally sending of humans out into space. And like, what are your thoughts as far as you think about human beings going out to the moon, going out to Mars, and obviously this rover is literally in its test bed has the materials of the outfits that they're going to be wearing and seeing what's viable and all that sort of thing. Kind of, what are the thoughts that you have in regards to the significance of that for us just as humans on planet Earth?
Yeah, I think that's huge. As Neil Armstrong said, one small leap for humans and a giant leap for mankind. And I think that this is that same thing. So this is kind of really the first time that we're talking about preparing for a planet to be habitable for humans and actually sending tools and instruments to prepare for that. One of the biggest things that I've been researching with this is in order to have a manned spacecraft go to Mars and return, we need 7 tons of methane and 27 tons of oxygen. How in the world are we going to get 7 tons of methane and 27 tons of oxygen to Mars? Well, it's really difficult. We'd have to make multiple trips in order to do that, just to get one manned spacecraft to Mars. So this spacecraft, this rover Moxie, with the ability of Moxie, it's going to be showing us that we have the capability to produce enough oxygen right on Mars so that we can make it easier for us to travel back and forth between Earth and Mars. So taking these steps is going to be huge, and these are the things that we're going to see, and the things that are going to make it possible for us to inhabit Mars and explore the new possibilities of being a dual planetary species.
Yeah, and I think that's the big deal. It's time to think about it, that we are getting ready to be a dual planetary species. And technically, I guess we could try. Like if we were going to do the moon, that would be also another, celestial orb, right? So that might be 3, right? But that is just phenomenal when you think about that. That is completely a change of everything from that point. Like, and this is starting that of just, we'll mark when we actually landed on Mars and human beings started being there and on Earth, right?
Yeah.
And make it sustainable. And again, with you're looking at the rovers and everything, we are in the process of seeing if we can actually create out of the atmosphere and what's there oxygen. right?
Yeah.
That is phenomenal. I mean, that is just amazing when you think about that. Basically, in Moxie is what, in a laboratory sense, what trees do on this planet, right, or other planets, right? And then they're trying to replicate that now. Evidently, and I heard the question asked, which was interesting, is like, what are they going to do with the oxygen that they produce? And they're just like, well, we're just going to throw it out back into the atmosphere because there's nothing to do with it. It's basically there to test to see if they can do it. Because if they can do it, like you're saying, that there's so much then that we don't have to ship to Mars to make it viable to create fuel and obviously create oxygen for breathing and a lot of things. Obviously, we're very highly dependent on oxygen as humans. So that's just absolutely phenomenal. So Ricky, what next? What do you want to cover next?
So just going back to those sensors and more so familiarizing with what each of these kind of the portions of the rover are doing. You know, if you want to think about the rover as having, you know, body parts and what portions of that bot are really being used as its body parts. So So, yeah. So first, you know, the body. Of course, the body is protecting all of the electronics that are on the inside, the internals, keeping those things away from dust. One of the biggest things so far in the rovers that we've sent to Mars previously has been dust. Dust has destroyed our rovers, even though they've lasted well beyond the time that we expected them to last. I believe was that Spirit was only expected to last 3 months and ended up lasting 6 years on Mars in the harsh conditions until it was taken out of commission by a dust storm. So the dust has taken out several of our rovers that we've sent to Mars previously, but those rovers were quite a bit smaller than this rover. And as we said before, this rover's about 10 foot wide, so that's a pretty big rover. Then we're talking about the brains. So the brains of this outfit and the computer, that's the computer on this robot that's going to be processing all that information. So as it reads data from that arm, as it shoots that laser at different rocks and rock formations and studies that data, that computer will be reading that information and storing that data for retrieval and for that data to be sent to different satellites so that we can get that data back down to Earth. So what about temperature controls? So this robot is outfitted with internal heaters and insulation and more. As we said before, the conditions of entering Mars's atmosphere, it's very hot. It's at 1300 degrees Celsius. The neck and head. So the mast and the cameras of the rover give it eyes to see and now ears with the addition of mics in the mast of that robot, allowing the robot to see and hear where it's going. So that allows NASA engineers to send those communications to that robot and be more efficient and effective with the communication that they're sending that robot now that they can kind of see a little bit better. The arm. So that arm, like I said, is a way for that robot to extend to up into high places or down into the depths of a cavity on the planet or down into a crater to collect rock samples. And now with the new capabilities, we can actually scan the ground with radar to do ground penetrating pictures. So that's just new capabilities and really cool things that'll give us new insights to the Martian planet. And then, of course, the batteries and battery power and the antennas that allow us to communicate, to speak, and listen to other bots, but also all the way back to Earth and to the orbiters that are orbiting around the planet.
Check back in with them.
So we're going to come back with and finish out talking about some of these sensors, but we're going to tune over to NASA's live feed and see what's going on over there.
This team has spent 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, testing this thing for years, and so this is This is really the culmination of all that work. So this vehicle is getting ready to push that cruise stage away. Once it gets pushed away, the entry system with the rover inside, with the rover still in charge, is going to get ready to take the vehicle, turn it to the right orientation, and aim it to Mars, and prepare for entering the atmosphere. This won't be long. Be prepared for this event.
We're about a minute and a half from cruise stage separation, about 11 minutes, 20 seconds from entry interface.
Okay, so it's about 10 minutes from cruise stage separation till entering the top of the atmosphere. From then on and out, things happen
We are switching
fast.
to MFSK tones. Telemetry will have stopped.
Telecom is confirming that the spacecraft has switched to broadcasting tones. These tones are received directly from Perseverance, but have very limited information content. We won't receive real-time information until about 9-10 minutes from now, once the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter starts relaying information from Perseverance. We are under a minute from cruise stage separation, about 10.5 minutes from entry interface.
It's getting exciting. I have to admit, I am quite anxious, but very hopeful that this machine is going to do what we asked it to do.
We are seeing the heartbeat tones.
Okay, that means that there's no more ones and zeros coming. It's just the vehicle telling us it's still alive.
We're continuing to receive tones from Perseverance, standing by for cruise stage separation. We have indication that cruise stage separation has been confirmed by the spacecraft.
We're off on a good start.
In about 1 minute, Perseverance's landing software will wake up and begin the final preparations for entry. The first action it will do is to fire warm-up pulses with its entry thrusters. These pulses ensure that the spacecraft gets the thrust that it wants during entry interface. We're about 9 minutes from entry interface.
Okay, so now the vehicle's on its own. It's turning itself into the direction of facing the heat shield toward Mars, and will eventually hitting the top of the atmosphere. We're not far away. This is going to go very quickly from here on out.
That's confirmation that we got shadowed by the cruise stage as it passed through our beam to the Earth.
Telecom indicated actually that we could see a signal that the cruise stage went between the Perseverance entry capsule and Earth. So we saw a little blip.
So what they just finished talking about was the loss of communications as we enter the 7 minutes of terror here shortly. So what's happening here is you heard them say maybe no more ones and zeros are coming back and forth, that you just hear the heartbeat. So what's happening there is that means there's no more data connection. So they're no longer controlling what's happening with that robot, and that robot's no longer looking for them to send it a signal to tell it what to do. It's going to go into automated mode. So what's happening right now is it's just sending a heartbeat back saying, hey, I'm still alive. Hey, I'm still alive. And letting you know that the bot is still alive. But so what is happening with that communication, and how is that communication happening? Well, in space, there's a thing called the Deep Space Network. And the Deep Space Network is a network of satellites and orbiters and antennas that are sending data all around space, controlling traffic, controlling, sending us all the information. Every spacecraft that is moving through space is using the the Deep Space Network, to communicate information from the craft back to Earth, or back to the International Space Station, or wherever it may go, or wherever it may need to go. So what's happening right now with the bot on Mars, there are currently 2 orbiters that are orbiting Mars that we can communicate with. But we have to get that information all the way back down to Earth. And as I said before, excuse me, that is an 11 light seconds away. I mean, 11 light minutes away from Earth. So we have to wait to see if we successfully landed. And that's the station, the stage of the EDL that we're about to enter. So we're going to cut back over to the feed as we enter the EDL stage in the 7 minutes of terror.
This is as expected. We're currently just over 6 minutes from entry interface.
Okay, and now we wait. As soon as we get to the top of the atmosphere, it'll be very quickly, which is the entry point. It won't be very long before the atmosphere will start getting thicker and thicker. It's going very quickly at a fairly steep angle of 15 degrees into the atmosphere. And as it starts to slow down.
We're just under, we're about 5.5 minutes from entry interface. We're still receiving heartbeat tones. We expect to continue receiving heartbeat tones until about 5 minutes after entry. At that time, Perseverance will be no longer in view of our antennas here on Earth. About 90 seconds prior to entry, the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter should begin receiving telemetry from Perseverance and streaming it to Earth in near real time. There are a few expected short outages, such as when we have a plasma blackout or when we enter the peak heating phase. Aside from these outages caused by the plasma blackout, antenna switching, or high dynamic events, spacecraft events, we should have telemetry until about 90 seconds after landing. A plasma blackout is when the signal from Perseverance isn't strong enough to make it through the superheated, super fast air flowing around the spacecraft all the way down to Earth. Once the temperature drops below that peak heating, we do reacquire the signal from Perseverance. We are currently about 4.5 minutes from entry interface. Perseverance continues to report heartbeat tones, indicating everything is nominal.
Okay, what we're looking for now is Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter should be in view soon of our vehicle and be able to listen to ones and zeros coming from a separate radio that's really designed to talk between spacecraft.
MRO reports the electro radio is powered on, ready to receive signals from the lander.
Okay, MRO is ready and able and waiting for to hear from our rover.
Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter has reported that it's ready to receive the signals from Perseverance. It should be in a few minutes here. We're just
Flight level 1
from entry interface.
We don't need these ones and zeros, as Swati said, but to land safely. But we really need it for our own health and well-being today to keep our nerves under control. But
around this time, a second spacecraft, Maven, should begin picking up telemetry from Perseverance and will continue to record that telemetry until several minutes post-landing. We won't get that data for several hours after landing as it's being recorded and then will be forwarded to Earth later. We are continuing to receive heartbeat tones, indicating that everything is nominal. We're currently at about 3 minutes until entry interface.
Okay. Very soon we'll be getting ones and zeros, I hope, from our radio on the rover. The entry interface is nothing more than just an arbitrary place in the sky that we've defined to be above the atmosphere. But from that point on, there's definitely atmosphere, and above it there isn't.
We are 2 minutes from entry interface. Perseverance is to transmit heartbeat tones, indicating everything is nominal.
So the tones can tell us whether something's bad or not is happening. So far the heartbeat is doing well. So the vehicle thinks it's in good shape to land, which is a great sign.
We're just under 2 minutes from entry interface. As it gets closer to Mars, Perseverance is actually being pulled in by gravity and accelerating. By the time Perseverance reaches entry interface point, she should be going just under 5.4 kilometers per second. We're at about 90 seconds from entry interface and standing by for Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter to pick up the telemetry. We are 1 minute from entry interface.
MROs are in receive mode.
We have confirmation that the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter is now relaying data from Perseverance. We're about 30 seconds from entry interface. Perseverance is going about 5.2 kilometers per second and is about 190 kilometers altitude above the surface of Mars.
Confirm your jet data flow.
About seconds from entry interface. 5.3 kilometers per second and an altitude
Here we go.
of 150 kilometers from the surface of Mars.
So this is the first part of that entry. I said the spacecraft is currently moving at 12,500 miles per hour, and that entry is at 1,300 degrees Celsius. So really hot and really fast. So that's why this is a really critical part of the mission.
The spacecraft is now waiting until it begins feeling the atmosphere of Mars slow it down. Once there is enough atmosphere, it will start controlling its path to the landing target. Navigation is also confirming that we can see a little bit of that slowdown of the atmosphere on the Perseverance entry capsule. Our current velocity is about 5.36 kilometers per second and an altitude of about 67 kilometers from the surface.
We are probably seeing MRO plasma blackout at this point.
So the goal is to get that slowed down to 950 miles per hour here. So listen for that. Listen for it to slow down to 950 miles per hour before we release that parachute.
Perseverance. We have indications that Perseverance is now performing bank reversals in the atmosphere. These are the steps in order to control its distance to the landing target. Perseverance has just passed through the point of maximum deceleration and has indicated that it felt approximately 10 Earth Gs of deceleration.
MRO has lock again.
We saw a small outage of the UHF telemetry from Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter during that peak heating phase, likely caused by the plasma blackout. Perseverance is still continuing to perform bank reversals in the atmosphere to control its distance to the landing target. Perseverance is going about 1 kilometers per second at an altitude of about 16 kilometers from the surface of Mars. We have entered heading alignment, which means Perseverance is no longer trying to control the distance to Mars, but to the target on Mars, but instead is flying straight to the target. Our current velocity is about 550 meters per second at an altitude of about 15 kilometers from the surface.
MRO's reporting good telemetry log.
We are coming upon the straighten up. We are starting the straighten up and fly right maneuver, where the spacecraft will jettison the entry balance masses in preparation for parachute deploy and to roll over to give the radar a better look at the ground. The navigation has confirmed that the parachute has deployed, and we are seeing significant deceleration in the velocity. Our current velocity is 440 meters per second at an altitude of about 12 kilometers from the surface of Mars. Perseverance is now slowed to subsonic speeds, and the heat shield has been separated. This allows both the radar and the cameras to get their first look at the surface. Current velocity is 145 meters per second at an altitude of about 9.5 kilometers above the surface.
So now that target range navigation can activate and be used, that the heat shield is dropped off the bottom.
Yes, yes, yes.
Perseverance now has radar lock on the ground. Current velocity is about 100 meters per second, 6.6 kilometers of the surface. Perseverance is continuing to descend on the parachute. We are coming up on the initialization of terrain relative navigation and subsequently the priming of the landing engines. Our current velocity is about 90 meters per second at an altitude of 4.2 kilometers.
So Percy will descend with that parachute
Confirmation that the lander vision system
down
has
to
produced
about
a valid
68
solution
feet.
and
So
part
our
of terrain relative
21
navigation.
meters before the jetpack will be deployed. So that's the next maneuver that
We
we'll
have
see.
timing of the landing engines. Current velocity is 83 meters per second at about 2.6 kilometers from the surface of Mars. We have confirmation that the back shell has separated. We are currently performing the divert maneuver. Current velocity is about 75 meters per second at an altitude of about 1 kilometer off the surface of Mars.
Here in Safety Bravo.
We have completed our terrain relative navigation. Current speed is about 30 meters per second, altitude of about 300 meters off the surface of Mars.
So jetpack's now engaged, lowering that bot down to about 20 meters above the surface, and then we'll start that sky
We have
crane
started our
maneuver.
constant velocity accordion, which means we are conducting the sky crane, about to conduct the sky crane maneuver.
We've lost direct to Earth tones.
As expected. As expected.
Sky crane maneuver has started, about 20 meters off the surface.
So now it's going to lower that bot
Getting signal
using
from
tethers down
MRO.
to the surface of Mars safely. So the next thing we'll know that we made it down to the surface of Mars safely.
Touchdown confirmed. Perseverance safely on the surface of Mars, ready to begin seeking the sands of past life. At this point, the descent stage has flown away to a safe distance. Perseverance is continuing to transmit.
We made it! We made it!
Through Mars Iconic Orbiter to Earth.
More reports, they're still getting telemetry from the lander.
All right, all stations.
We got it.
Touchdown
We're there.
confirmed. We're going to wait for the images.
Wow.
This is so exciting. The team is beside themselves. It's so surreal. Stay tuned. We might get some pictures.
That'd be great.
Right. So we made it. We made it. We made it. It landed successfully. Yes.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's so
That is
awesome.
simply amazing.
Yeah. So now what's going to happen that we landed successfully, we made it through the atmosphere. We did not crash and burn on our way in. So next, what's going to happen is one of the coolest things, kind of that we talked about a little bit before. So the rover is going to land there, do some checks, make sure everything is okay and everything's still functioning from its travels into the Martian atmosphere and down to the surface. But once those checks run through, then the bot is going to actually release that little helicopter that we kind of talked about. So that little helicopter is the first time that we're going to fly a helicopter in the Martian air. And after the bot releases that helicopter, so it's going to drop down from the bottom, and the bot's going to drive away a safe distance. And then the bot is going to control the helicopter through a series of 5 missions. So during those 5 missions, we'll be testing the helicopter for flight distance and the feasibility of flying a helicopter in the Martian atmosphere. So why is it such a huge deal to fly a helicopter in the Martian atmosphere? Well, because the Martian atmosphere is so thin, and it makes it really difficult to fly anything heavier than air. So this bot only weighs 4 pounds, but still heavier than air. So what techniques are the engineers using to combat that and to ensure that this robot flies, or that this helicopter flies? Well, they're using a dual rotor helicopter with those rotors spinning in opposite directions. And they're going to be spinning those rotors really fast at 3 times the speed of a normal helicopter. So those rotors will be spinning at 3,000 RPMs, therefore giving that helicopter enough lift to lift off of the ground. So that first mission of those 5 will be a simple test. So that first test, they'll be testing the bot to fly up into the atmosphere and hover about 10 meters for about 30 seconds.
Let's take a listen. And also, I think they just got their first image from the rover.
Oh, wow.
So let's take a look.
For Steve. Stand by for Steve.
You did it. You did it. You did. You led the team. You made it happen.
We just got our second image in. Our second image is in.
Okay, these we have a camera in the front and rear of the spacecraft. They're near the ground, so these are pretty close. You can see the wheels there, and they're a little dirty because we've got glass covers over these cameras. But we took these seconds after landing, so there's still dust in the air from our landing event. So this is happening. This happened just seconds ago. Just arrived, and this is really amazing. And we even know where we landed. This is the most amazing thing. The vehicle has told us where it's landed because it figured it out. This is a sign. NASA works. NASA works. And when we put our arms together and our hands together and our brains together, we can succeed. This is what NASA does. This is what we can do as a country on all of the problems we have. We need to work together to do these kinds of things and make success happen.
Joining us now is the acting administrator of NASA, Steve Jurisic. Steve, welcome and congratulations.
Hey, thank you. What an amazing day.
And how does it feel to have another rover on Mars?
It's amazing to have Perseverance join Curiosity on Mars, and what just a credit to the team. I mean, just what an amazing team to work through all the adversity that goes and all the challenges that go with landing a rover on Mars, plus the challenges of COVID, and just an amazing accomplishment.
And what does this mean for NASA and its future plans?
So for robotic exploration, every time we execute a mission with new instruments, we discover new things and things we never thought we would discover. So that always informs our future robotic missions, both landers, rovers, and orbiters. This mission also has technology on it. One of the cool things is the Ingenuity helicopter. It's an experiment on this mission, but if it's successful, we can use it as an science observation platform by putting instruments on it, and also use it as a scout for future rover missions. And then just the entry, descent, and landing capability. It'll allow us to land more larger, more ambitious robots on the surface of Mars. And then for human exploration, we have the Mars Entry, Descent, and Landing Instrumentation, which is going to give us EDL information. We have the Mars Environmental Dynamics Analyzer. It's going to give us size and properties of dust particles, because when we send people, we're going to have to deal with that dust. This is just an incredible mission because of the science and the technology, and then caching samples for a Mars sample return mission. That will be an amazing mission, the first round trip to Mars and back, and bringing those samples cached by Perseverance back to Earth to examine with state-of-the-art equipment in our laboratories here on Earth.
We have so much to look forward to. And we also have a student question coming in from...
All right. Well, that was it.
Yeah, I want to say, first off, thank you all for
Yes.
joining us today and
Oh my
being a
gosh.
part of our watch party. It was amazing just to experience this landing and to be a part of the next missions and next wave of life in space. I think this is just awesome. And just stay tuned and follow us, because we'll be doing more follow-ups with this. So we're going to follow up and keep track of the Perseverance mission, but we're also going to be following up with future space missions, and even going back and looking at some of the previous missions that kind of led up to this point. So go ahead and follow us on social media if you haven't. Hit the subscribe button on YouTube. But most importantly, make sure you're keeping track of us on our page. So go to brainstemu.com, join our mailing list, and follow us and stay tuned. If you know of anybody that would be interested in STEM or learning more about space, send them our way, whether that's an adult or a kid, anyone. We're just here to inspire more people to, do these things, inspire students to chase the dream of being an astronaut, being a rocket scientist, being a robotics engineer. That's what we're here to do, and that's what we're going to continue to do with our BrainSTEM live show. So just continue to follow us as we inspire more people.
Thank you so much, and we'll talk to you later.